Our next presenter is Jordi Selman from HousingAnywhere. A warm welcome.
So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me. Honor once again. I think it was 5 years ago in Berlin when we just joined the portfolio. Yeah, 2018 was a great day. Back then, I was also just CEO, so I've been with the company for quite some time since the advent of the marketplace that we started. HousingAnywhere has been around for quite some time as well. But let's see if we can take it there. Yes, here we are. So, starting off. So, Jordi Selman, been with HousingAnywhere now for 8 years, CEO since 2018. Has been a great time. I brought today Eric, he's our CFO, and he will join me on the stage for questions also later. And HousingAnywhere is a mid to long-term rental platform. And we primarily focus on students, young professionals, expats. We do that with different brands. I will tell you more about that. And the overall brand idea that we have is that it should be very easy to rent, and it empowers people. We want to set them free. So that's the tagline that we have. So just to get started, we'll go over some different items. Shouldn't take too long, so that we also still have time for questions. We'll cover the business, obviously. In some detail, so on the value proposition as well, we'll tell you more what makes HousingAnywhere special, what is the market opportunity, and why is it such an interesting business. So just to get started, the team itself, myself, Eric, we also have Yim, who is holding the fort today as an experienced operator. We have quite some years under the belt, and we're all operators in that sense. We really like the space. We like to be involved in classifieds, in brands that also touch consumer. And we're backed by VNV for some years now, but also since 2016 by RealWeb, which is an investment company owned by the founders of Immobiliare, who run the #1 real estate classified in Italy, but also with quite some activities in Southern Europe. And that, I think, operational experience plus the investment experience in this space, in classifieds, in online marketplaces, and also those businesses where network effects do best. I think that combination is very strong, and we're very happy with this cap table. There are some other people as well in the cap table that we didn't mention here for some disclosure reasons. But overall, we're very much focused on the long term. We're in it for the long term, as well as we believe that we're attacking, I would say, a huge market with rental accommodation. And there's also quite some incumbents when it comes to classifieds, so we got a long way to go. At HousingAnywhere, we really want to empower anybody to live however they want and wherever they want. So the vision is to become a global marketplace. We're focused on Europe primarily. We are forming a beachhead also in North America, in the United States. And right now we're primarily focused on international mobility. That's really the key focus that we have as a marketplace. People that move across the border and find it hard to kind of transact with trust. That's the key part. The average rental period you find is about 6 months, so we're very different from travel. And we're also very different from local classifieds where people look for multi-year engagements. How do we target people? Well, we have tenants and landlords, obviously. We, as a platform, serve these two. And we bring them together on the marketplace where we have them connect. Tenants can book online very conveniently. Should be as easy as booking a hotel. That's the idea, but also with the right set of guarantees. And one of them is really focused on payments. We take in the payment of the first month rent at the time of booking. We also handle deposits, and we only release that after the tenant has moved in, so they can transact with confidence, with trust. And that's very important when you're moving from one country to another, or when you're transacting with any new landlord that you've never met before, also in a local market. So we believe this is a unique feature. On the landlord side, it's very convenient to actually rent out with two people that, again, you've never met before. just an average quote would be from a landlord is that what used to take weeks now takes hours or days. Typically, after the first contact, we see an average booking time of 24 hours, which is very short if you just compare it to the more traditional rental life cycle, where you will go through this meticulous, stressful process before you actually secure the new tenant or your new place. So that's spectacular. Also, of course, we don't need any viewings because we provide guarantees, but also superior media. You can take a look at the site, but we have many different media options, and we try to make, let's say, as best of an impression of the place where you will actually move into as possible. And of course, there's numerous ways on how you can even push that further, but we see quite some innovation there down the line. When it comes to other guarantees that we provide to landlords, the first month rent, it's paid, and it's the landlord's. That's important, unless the landlord cancels. Then he has to refund. Then we refund the tenant. But that's a guarantee that we provide. And in select markets, we also have a rent guarantee that actually secures them of all the rental payments throughout the whole tenancy, in case the tenant doesn't pay up. So that's additional security that we provide to them that they get exclusively for us. In the end, we're not only HousingAnywhere, we're also two other brands, but we're unifying the platforms that are powering these brands. Main platform runs on HousingAnywhere. It's the #1 midterm rental marketplace in Europe. We've been going through quite some competition, some other well-funded players that I believe we've beaten. So I think, can demonstrate also that we're quite hardened in that way, and we've done it also with far less money. So I think it was a clear proof point for us to become that #1. Over time, we acquired two other players. Kamernet in the Netherlands is a room classified, almost 20-year-old brand, really nice heritage, and really has a focus on students in the Netherlands. Just made sense for us, was an important market for the Netherlands, 90% market share, this brand there. And we saw a nice opportunity there, so we acted. Same with StudApart, French student rental marketplace, not a classified, so a marketplace also, has been doing transactions for quite some time. It's focused on students in France, growing really, really nicely. France is really booming, sees a lot of new supply coming to the market that we're getting booked. Overall, with that position in France, we're also very happy, as it's one of the top 3 markets in Europe when it comes to rental accommodation. The other ones are the UK and Germany. In Germany, we're also very strong. In terms of business performance, just a nice high-level liquidity metric here with traffic. So we've been able to grow traffic quite nicely over the last 2 years. Even during COVID, when all flights were stranded, we were still doing pretty nice in terms of traffic. But we've seen a good post-COVID boom happening. 2.6 million visitors per month at the peak, over 22 that we actually welcomed on our site on our sites last year. And if we then look at the actual revenue and the contribution margin ratio, then we see that we have been growing as well, both organically, which is the dark orange, but also with the addition of the new companies, of the new brands. Kamernet and StudApart have not been the only acquisitions we've done. We've done 5 in total. Smaller bolt-ons, those other 3. And Kamernet and StudApart were more sizable businesses that we've been integrating. We're very happy with that, because these are also businesses that have been adding to our revenue significantly, but also to our contribution margin. Businesses that were profitable at the time we acquired them and have been adding to our profitability since. Another element that I would just want to highlight for us, why we have a contribution margin that is around 60%, is because we've been winning SEO for quite some time. We see a lot of recurring traffic as well, returning traffic. It's not as spectacular where we only spend, like with BlaBlaCar, 5% on paid. We do a little more, but with that SEO and with the affiliate traffic, those deals in place, we are able to secure a high contribution margin. With the Kamernet brand, well, #1, 90% market share, and also has been around for 20 years. So there's quite some brand awareness going on that brand in the Netherlands, giving us lots of direct traffic. And with StudyPart, there's a lot of one-on-one relationships with universities, more than 120 schools in France, that basically promote StudyPart as the go-to platform for finding student accommodation to all their students. So that there's some well-shaped marketing programs developed with those universities, where basically the universities take care of the distribution on the demand side. And all these kind of tools that we have in our belt, we're of course trying to spread them across the group, but all of those tools help us to reach what I believe are unbeatable unit economics in this market. That also shows in some other metrics that I have here. So we have been growing our lead in terms of organic traffic from 2x to 5x. So 2x is about in January 2021. By now 5x the traffic that our closest competitor in Europe has. So really been growing that lead. Also in terms of relative market share to those competitors that we identify, we are in a number 1 or number 2 position. So really happy with how that's been developing over the past few years. We'll keep on doing this. And also in other markets, this is one of our strengths and we'll play it. Coming to market opportunity, just to put things a bit into perspective, we are now very much focused on students, young professionals, international mobility, but we believe that if you look at the technology that we've built, but also the journey and the user experience, rentals are going to be more managed and with a wider set of guarantees and value propositions, and will also be more online instead of through real estate agents, for example, or through classified. So we believe that that market will mature over the next few years. Can easily also take 5 to 10, and I'm fine with that. We take it easy, and we take the opportunities as they come. And there's no need to deploy a lot of cash to that. That's a natural evolution as we see it. And also, as we expand our platform, we can not only do rooms, but we can also do apartments. We can also do it for families. We do not then only do it for people that are international, for international mobility, but also for those that are local. So that's more or less our roadmap, how we see it over the next few years. 1.3 trillion spent in euros per year on rent in the US and in Europe. And that's really all rentals. That's more than 100 million rental households. So that's a huge market. Now, of course, there's quite some segmentation in there, so you have to be picky as you grow towards it. Right now, we really are servicing cross-border contracts, like people that travel cross-border to move for work, move for studies. But over time, we also go into those other categories where we basically want to target anybody below 35 years old, and at some points also just rental households in general. We do that by really expanding our marketplace. So if you look at the entire rental life cycle, it's more than a marketplace alone where you match demand and supply. It's also really the workflows that sit behind it. On an advertiser side, the marketplace really activity you would see is really in lead acquisition, advertising your property, screening all the candidates you get and qualifying them, and then confirming bookings. So that's really the marketplace part. After that, it really goes into the process that we call what you go through to the move-in. So preparing for the move-in, collecting the deposit, moving in, actually doing the checking reports, all these sort of things. And then while you are in the tenancy life cycle, you have repairs to take care of, you have the rental payments until there's actually a move out. So our platform will cover this over the next few years. We are picky on what to do because, as it looks like just a few features you add, you have to really be careful that you're not bloating it and build something that is really subpar. So we're quite picky, and we're now focusing on from search to move-in. That's the part that we cover. But there's plenty of opportunity down the line that will actually cause more stickiness with the advertiser, but also sets us up for additional opportunities where we have a more intimate relationship with advertisers and are able to sell them insurance, mortgage, or other sort of financing products that we see there. On the tenant side, simply the mirror image. So, but a very different journey that you have to shape differently. Also, of course, the property search. That's a key feature to actually be able to find what meets your needs, but also then securing it and really booking it. That's another part. So that's what we're focused on. We also do we've been venturing into rental payments, doing more and more of that. but still not really at a point simply because of we didn't do the investments yet. Not at the point where we say like we do the full rental life cycle for all our tenants and for all our landlords, but that's obviously an opportunity that we dive deeper in. Over the next few years, what we want to do, well, at least 20% year-on-year growth. So we're on that path. We're on the path. So that's great. We established a foothold in North America. It's really important for us. It's a very sizable market. Of the 1.3 trillion, it's about 60%. So it's a very big rental market. And there's also a lot of international mobility that actually goes into the USA. So that's a key market for us to play in. And lastly, really maintaining that profitability. For us, it's key. It's a bit of how we've done it, not by basically emptying deep pockets, by really focusing on unit economics. So personally, I never really want to compromise on that one. And make smart investments in those areas that we see that we can expand in terms of covering a larger part of the rental life cycle. Okay, that's on Housing Anywhere. Let's do Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Have a seat in the hot seat. So I might kick it off with a question from me. Could you talk a bit about how consumer behavior has changed and demand in overall for your products over the past, let's say, 18 to 24 months?
You mean post-COVID?
Yeah, post-COVID, yeah.
Or just in general? If we
Both.
Okay, so I believe what we, in a nutshell, what we've seen is that during COVID, obviously, was a bad time for us. So during COVID, we saw like 80-90% revenue drop overnight. So that was a tough one to swallow. But we managed to stay afloat. Also because we weren't so dependent on paid traffic and these sort of things. So when you see that conversion really drops, that's not really the problem. So we've been quite resilient, and in that sense, also we've been able to gain a lot of market share, and and also act on the M&A opportunities that were there. Consumer behavior, we see more adoption of online rentals. We see that it's becoming more normal. We see that people demand more for the money's worth. We see rental prices really go up, so people are becoming more demanding. And also when you see a lot of online bookings, people are moving closer to what's been set in standards in terms of online travel, so hotel bookings and an Airbnb, for example. So in that sense, I think consumers have turned to become more demanding. And we have a set of value propositions that I think is well aligned with that and it really sets it apart from classifieds. So this is I think a natural evolution that people are starting to demand more. To add to that, you see a lot of classifieds that are looking for ways to basically answer to that. And in some geos, you see that they are successful in testing, but actually in most geos not. Meaning that they will start to focus more on real estate sales and less on rentals. So we kind of see, because the consumer is demanding more, we see the space opening up for us.
Great. And a question on competition. You showed a slide where you show that you're much bigger than your closest competitor. Is it possible to name those competitors? And a follow-up question on that. Do you see Airbnb as a potential competitor going into the long-term rental market?
Starting with the first one, sure I can name them. So competitors we've seen in the space that have been VC funded were Spot a Home and Uniplaces. Those were real marketplaces. There's some other smaller players, but not really that present. Then those are real marketplaces, and all the other competitors that are out there are simply classifieds. And they typically are not really growing. They're stagnant. There's little investment happening especially when the room classifieds, a little investment happening actually in the journey and really upgrading it. So they're a bit like lame ducks, but quite entrenched in the sense that they have a big share of mind if they have been around for like 10, 15 years. So it will take some time, I think, for users to move from one to another. And then the other two players that I just named, those were the competitors that we've been kind of battling in Europe. Moving to Airbnb, I do believe Airbnb still has a long way to go. I think it's a great product, but in terms of rentals or travel, it are really two different categories. You move from a regulatory perspective you're in a completely different ball game. And also in terms of expectations that you see with the hosts that they call the landlords, they're very different in terms of income that they seek. So what we see more and more actually these days, especially post-COVID, is that we see a more hybrid game happening where HousingAnywhere is used for more long-term, and the pricing strategy reflects that of these landlords, where they use Airbnb actually for the short-term options to fill like the small gaps in between these longer stays.
I think we have a question from up there.
Thanks. Just a couple of questions from me. Do you happen to have any liability with regards to these 6-month rentals that you help out with? I'm guessing not, but how is it going to change when you're trying to transition your model to a more longer term rental or general rental, as you mentioned you're going to try to do in the future? And the second question, if I may just finish that off.
Just on that, what do you mean with liability?
Do you have any liability with regards to damages that might happen during the course of this?
It's insured. So no, we don't carry that.
All right. And the other question is around, probably I missed this during the presentation, the commissions on either side. How has that trended over the years?
Yeah, so as a marketplace, we take a commission, and Eric can tell the details.
So yes, indeed, there's a different by market, but in general we take a margin for the tenant as well as from the landlord. By market it can be a little bit different, and also from a regulatory perspective. For example, in the Netherlands we're not allowed, or there's a bit of a question mark, if we can do that on both sides. So there we only charge on one side, and the other part is more subscription model. The same for Kamernet as a brand is more a subscription model as well.
Perfect, thank you.
One more here.
Hi. Can you talk a little bit more about the typical tenants, or sorry, the typical landlords? So how does a landlord decide whether to do a short-term rental or a long-term rental? And like, is there a trend for landlords to prefer one versus the other? And also, are landlords typically like single location, or do they are there companies that have, you know, dozens of them?
Okay, so when let's go with the first question. So when a landlord has a property, of course, there's a strategy on how to make an income on it. So the strategy typically is a reflection of their own appetite for risk, and also for the operations that come with it. If they like the operations, if they have a bit more risk, then you typically see them more focused on short-term rentals. If they like the seasonality, perhaps also with short-term rentals, they are more there. With long-term rentals, these are typically people that seek to profit for longer term from a scheme. And they don't want to really be burdened by the operational load that you would have with all the changes and everything. So you see that preference set definitely is different. And of course, the location of the property is very important, if it's actually suited for short-term rentals or not, especially for holiday rentals. When it comes to the composition of different landlords, so for what we see in the markets that we operate in, about, depending on the country, 15 to 25% are larger residences, either co-living or purpose-built student accommodation, where multiple units are in one building, and basically these units, there's like 20, 30 of the same type. So that's kind of more professional, more institutional property management that happens there. Then there's a very long tail of smaller property management companies, and and also in the long tail, even further down, you will find the private landlords. And private landlords typically account in the market for 10 to 20%, and then the remainder is this group of property management companies. With HousingAnywhere, we're really good with property management companies. With Stud Apart, the French brand in France, we're very good with PBSA and with co-living, and with Kamernet, we're very good with private landlords. So logically, for us as business leaders, we think, okay, how we're going to get actually best of breed across the group, so that we can be an all-encompassing marketplace where we're actually combining these three sort of property categories in one. And what's key to understand there is that if you look at many of the classifieds these days, is that they typically focus on one sort of landlord or one sort of configuration. And that makes it really unique, I believe, for us, because then from a searcher perspective, you actually see full choice and you see full market, rather than that you only see one type and you have to visit 3 sites. So we are very tuned into these different landlord types. And we also service them in a slightly different way.
Great. One final question from me. The same question I asked Frederick as the final question. If we look 5 years into the future, where are you in terms of your product, your offering, perhaps some color on what the financial profile might look like in 5-6 years of time?
I can repeat the answer, but the answer of Frederick. No, obviously we want to keep growing. So as I said, the market is huge. So we really want to have that beachhead in the US and be a sizable player there. That's one key for us. So that's important. In Europe, we really want to be the number one. We have a buy and build strategy, so we see some opportunities down the line to further consolidate the market. And it makes a lot of sense also if you look at the costs that go into building a platform like we do. And from a consumer perspective, and also from a landlord perspective, we're really an end-to-end rental platform where you can transact with security, with safety, and it really kind of makes you able to also transact without any stress, as the act of moving these days is a very stressful experience, and that's where we believe that the experience can be vastly better, and we do that by connecting this huge pool of demand with our trusted network of landlords.
Great. Thank you very much for that. Quick.
Welcome.